Coming up in This Week in Computer Hardware, Nvidia's Tegra's got a big flaw. How about Linux on your Switch? Samsung's got a new 970 Pro NVMe 512GB SSD and new 970 EVOs, Snap Spectacles 2.0, Dell's new 27-inch ultra-thin monitor, and more. It's all coming up next on TWiCH.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiCH.
Bandwidth for TWiCH is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 463, recorded on April 26, 2018. Samsung strikes back and the Switch has been hacked. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Casper, a sleep brand that continues to revolutionize its line of products to create an exceptionally comfortable sleep experience one night at a time. You can save $50 towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/twitch and using the promo code TWiCH at checkout. Welcome to TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, TWiCH's weekly show that aims to bring you the most useful, most engaging, most informative, and occasionally even the most charming news in PC hardware. We love mobile, we love desktops, we love consoles, and we have a begrudging affection for the Internet of Things, I will assure you. I'm Patty Norton, joined this week by Mr. Alan Malventano, who
how's it going?
I will say has never been, now or ever, known as Alvin Malventano.
Correct. Good save. Yeah.
I just, not that I may have called him that earlier. Man's broken bread in my home, and out of nowhere, I called him Alvin. Not the way to start a podcast, people.
That's okay.
Spectacles.com, ladies and gentlemen. Possibly the most exciting story we'll tell you today. Alan's a big fan of snapping. He's a Snapchatter. He loves to bring the snaps.
No.
Well,
I've done zero snaps myself, I believe.
He might be excited. So it's a second generation. I just think it's interesting that we're seeing hardware coming out of all sorts of strange places. Like Alibaba was working on an AI processor, then bought a Chinese AI chip manufacturer. We've seen hardware coming out of the oddest places. And, this is Snap's second generation or second evolution of the spectacles. I like Casey Newton's summary up on The Verge. They're slimmer, they take photos, and you can take them in the pool. But will you? And the short answer is...
The bigger question is, can you actually get them? Because wasn't the first generation extremely hard for folks to get their hands on?
I don't know if they were. Yeah, well, they were difficult to get a hold of, but I'm going to hit the buy now button.
I want to see you wearing those.
I don't think there's any possible way these could look good on my face. Although the Sapphire with the Twilight, look at the midnight lens on the Sapphire, people. This is just sassy. Oh, they've got Ruby and Daybreak and Sunset. This is like this weird sort of Oakley's lenses from the 1980s meet indescribable frame style. I don't think I'm pretty.
You have to scroll through those until you find the one where the picture is a bearded older man.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So they're like $20 more than the first generation of spectacles. They only sold like 150,000 of the first generation of Snap spectacles. They wrote off like $40 million in merch, which, if you think about it, is a lot, because the retail price on these was only like $130, and literally, Business Insider said that less than half of the users continued to use spectacles a month after buying them. So they're trying to take them from cheap novelty to must-have device, and thankfully, like the transfer speed to your phone's supposed to be faster. They look considerably less atrocious, and they're thinner. Well, maybe they still look atrocious, but that's your call, not mine. It's one of the things that Mr. Newton points out at The Verge is the reason they're trying so hard to make this happen is because hardware is more lucrative than software or being a social empire that is not Facebook. But if the kids are asking you, they do stills now, which is a big plus. I don't know.
All right.
I was amused by that. Much more amused, much more interesting. Probably, for the several listeners that have not tuned out, well, amused over snapping with Spectacles 2.0. So last week, we talked about these amazing, stupid, cheap Western Digital SanDisk NVMe drives. Kind of out of nowhere, kind of exciting. We're talking about 950 Pro levels of performance, at least with sequential data. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, except for those people who had NDAs signed and special relationships with Samsung, we find the Samsung 970 Pro 512 gigabyte 970 EVO 250 500 gigabyte and 1 terabyte NVMe review. So,
yep.
What's the word, man?
So the word is, generally speaking, it is about like a 5 to 10% increase in all of the things over the equivalent 960s, basically.
Nice.
That's probably the simplest way to put it. It's very much an incremental style upgrade. There are some changes, like with the 960 series. If you might remember, the Pro, Samsung did some trick where they put the DRAM into the package of the controller to make more room for more flash packages. And then you had this sort of backwards thing where the Pro model was available in higher capacities than the EVO, even though TLC can store more bits for a given space than MLC. That's no longer the case here. They've just gone back to like basics. These are all the same kind of PCB layout. They all have external DRAM, which is going to make it, cheaper for Samsung to produce. Whether or not that results in a lower cost price is up for debate, as we'll discuss is probably towards the tail end of this part of this discussion. But it's kind of a simpler thing. They upped other differences. They upped the EVO to a 5-year warranty. EVO has historically been 3-year warranty. So now they both have the same warranty period. It's really down to how much do you want better performance, because the Pro still offers better performance, even though the EVO is still pretty darn good performance.
I mean, are we talking about 10% difference? Are we talking about 25% difference? Are we talking about, single digits in performance?
So if you go to the client QDepth weighted page of my review, in the first chart, you will see that let's compare, say, a 1 terabyte 970 EVO, which is the third entry in that chart. The blue line is important here. This is your read, like what you're basically this number translates to like the feel of the SSD in a system. So 970 EVO comes in at around 22,000. So that's like your equivalent IOPS that you would see running kind of normal stuff in a system at normal Q depths. So 22,000 goes up 27.6 with a 970 Pro. So that's more than single digit changes. It's definitely a difference. Whether or not that's a difference that you will actually feel trying to use the system will depend on how current that system is. Because when you start pushing IOs as high as these things do, you start running into, if you're running a typical game or a typical, application workload, you kind of shift the bottleneck around, right? As you speed up the storage device, now the bottleneck shifts off to the CPU, trying to actually do stuff with that information, et cetera. So, if you're on modern, current kind of bleeding edge hardware, you're probably going to care about that difference between an EVO or a Pro. If you really are of that mentality that I have to have the newest, fastest everything. For the rest of us, myself included, even though I'm kind of a storage nut, I would be perfectly happy with EVO level performance. One way to point that out a little bit better and put it into a little bit better context regarding these particular products is if you look at the mixed burst results, which is where the system is actually trying to do something in the background while trying to do reads. We'll just skip like right to the go down more. Go to the read service time chart. It's like the second blue chart. So this is how long did it take to do a bunch of things that totaled up to 4 gigabytes worth of reads on, with these different products, right? And you'll notice that, 970 EVO, it's like almost 5 seconds, 4.7 seconds. You go to a 960 Pro, that was 4 seconds, which was, again, faster. But the 970 Pro drops that to 3.7 seconds. So look at the kind of hairs you're splitting here, right? You're now down to a 0.3 second delta from the previous generation Pro to the current one. Out of 4 seconds, 0.3 out of 4. And if you scroll way down past that next crazy long chart to the crazy long chart after it, it's longer than the VJ might realize it is, because it's every SSD we've tested. It's pretty long. Okay, there you go. So 3.7 seconds was the 970 Pro. If you go all the way up to the bleeding edge, like 900p Optane SSD from Intel, that only gets you down to 3.4. So that's only another 0.3. Basically, you're getting into the whole diminishing returns thing here. Right. Yes, they're going faster, but how much faster can they possibly go to the point where other things are limiting you, right? And that's kind of where we are here, at least as far as our test suite and our results come up with compared to the landscape of products that are out there. So yes, it's faster. Yes, it's actually halfway to an Optane drive as far as the time it takes the new model to do stuff over the old model for the pros. But again, you're splitting hairs compared to, I don't know if your time is so valuable that you're measuring it in tenths of a second to do 4 gig worth of activity on a system.
I mean, I'm sure there's probably people that are dealing with like Wall Street trading systems or, super
but those guys are doing all their stuff in RAM.
That's true.
Like they're not even, this is not even in the same kind of ballpark as those folks. When latency is super critical like that, they shift completely. Like they're using Optane stuff and they're using RAM, right? But these drives it's not even an enterprise drive here. This is a consumer drive. It's just meant for you and me to put in our systems and use, right? So here's kind of the thing where I wish Samsung would have done better, given the more simplistic design, as the pricing. Towards the end of my article, the Pros are coming in at a little bit over 60 cents a gig, and the EVOs are still running around 45 cents a gig, which is, I know you say, whoa, but that's roughly where the previous generation was sitting.
I know, but given some of the drives you've seen, especially in the last couple of weeks, that's just so expensive.
I agree with you. Samsung is still able to get away with this because, they've been in this thing for a long time. Their drives are very proven, now, and they're still the fastest game in town, right? So if you absolutely need the fastest, that's the price you have to pay. Yes, you're right, Patrick. There is totally the Western Digital and SanDisk offering we just reviewed last week, and that thing is a very impressive drive, and it actually beat the 960 EVO in a couple of our tests. And it's a way cheaper drive. And if you're worried about the cost, go with that. If you're worried about the performance and you absolutely want the fastest thing, Samsung is, again, the only game in town now that they've released these 970s.
I got to say, I love the mixed burst throughput, the read service time for 4 gigabytes chart. And also looking at the simultaneous mixed burst through. Yeah, well, as you sort of described, but when you look at the simultaneous mixed burst throughput, where you're looking at one, it illustrates so dramatically the difference between write and read speeds, which is I feel like write speeds are someplace where it's pretty obvious that there's still magical work to be done. Not that it's going to happen. But
you have to realize the write workload for that is a much harder workload than the read workload for that test. I
know. So, but the difference between 100 miles an hour in Bonneville and 700 miles an hour on Bonneville is a lot of work too. But I'm saying is, if you think about it, saving out files, if you're video editing and dealing with terabytes of data or gigabytes of data, I should say, to be a mildly rational human being. I feel like these are getting so fast. We're going to be thinking a lot less about read speeds than we are about write speeds. And the other thing is looking at that read service time, that mixed burst throughput, you start to realize just exactly how slow a lot of the early hard drives are. I've got a first generation Intel drive, and I'm like, I bet that benchmark would be in the 300s for that particular drive.
Oh, for the time? So are you talking about the X25M? The first Intel SSD?
Yeah.
Because that's actually in the chart.
It is?
It's 113.6 seconds, my friend.
Much
It's like
faster than I
about
thought it would
15th from
be.
the bottom.
Wow. Well, you look at that.
Yeah, it's there. But I went way back when I did this test suite. I had to make sure that it worked on everything, all the way back to the first Intel SSD.
Oh, goodness.
So, 113.6 seconds versus 3.7.
But even an inexpensive drive from this year is going to be 5 times faster than that.
Sure.
Or move 5 times more data, or even considerably more. But
Absolutely.
It's pretty crazy to look at. You feel? I mean, it seems like in terms of a sweet spot, if you're into a high performance drive, it seems like that Western Digital SanDisk is definitely the sweet spot. What about for performance? What's your favorite? Is the My SSD, is that your favorite for the least expensive NVMe drive you can get, or should people stick with regular M.2 SSDs?
The My Digital Discount SBX specifically, that's meant to be like their budget as you can go product. It's only 2 lanes of PCI Express. It's not even 4. But again, you're not that worried about straight line speed if you're trying to go for super budget. Sure. You just want a responsive SSD that's, again, faster than the older SSD that you have in your system. And the SBX series is great, a great solution for that. Especially if you catch them on a sale. They actually do go on sale, even though they're already super cheap in the first place. It's good product, good price. And then if you want a little more performance, still a good price, I would say then you go over to your Western Digital /SanDisk thing. And then if you want the next rung up, 970 EVO. Honestly, with the launch of these, keep an eye out for deals on 960s. You're going to have people trying to clear out their stock because the 970 is the newest, baddest thing out. So just look for prices there. That's actually that applies to almost all PC hardware. Like if you're looking for the deal on something, especially since there's such a slim, update in performance between 960 and 970. Maybe you're worried about 3-year warranty versus 5-year warranty on a 960 EVO, but honestly, if it doesn't fail in 3 years, it's probably not going to fail in 5. So I wouldn't worry about it there that much.
The rule of PC hardware: wait till there's something you want more, and then buy the one that you wanted until you heard about that new one, and that's the sweet spot.
Comes down. Yeah, generally. Yeah, until the supply is gone, and then the price actually starts going up on the 1 generation old, because people are still trying to find it, and sellers think they can make an extra buck on it, right?
They do. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Casper. Casper is an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the cost. Casper is revolutionizing the mattress industry by cutting the cost of dealing with resellers and showrooms and passing the savings directly on to the consumer. This is an obsessively engineered mattress at a fair price. Having shopped for mattresses several times in my adult life, I will say there are a few deals I ever feel that I was ripped off harder on than the first adult mattress I purchased. And I say that coming from a family that has 60 years in the furniture industry, and having read all of the tips and the consumer reports and the guides, and knowing, for example, they'll match the price in any mattress, but every individual mattress store has their own brand with its own name. So there's no one else that can match them. Do you feel the rage coming out from me? That's what's so cool about Casper mattress, right? They combine multiple supportive memory foams for a sleep surface. It's got the right sink, just the right bounce. It feels good. It's a breathable design. It helps you sleep cool and regulate your temperature through the night. This is not a terrible foam mattress. This is good stuff. We're talking about long-lasting comfort, support so your back doesn't hurt in the morning, so your spine's not bent. You can buy it easily online and completely risk-free. Leo got a new Casper mattress, tried it out. It's soft, it's comfortable. Casper understands the importance of truly trying out a mattress that in all reality you spend a third of your life on, or maybe a little less if you're a parent. Casper offers free delivery, painless returns within a 100-day period, so you don't have to lie down in a showroom. Think about that. You got 3+ months to decide if this is the mattress for you. Casper Mattresses upholds the highest environmental production standards. They are made in the United States of America. Free shipping and returns to the U.S., Canada, and the U.K. Get a Casper mattress today. You can save $50 towards select mattresses by going to casper.com/twitch and entering the promo code TWiCH at checkout. That's casper.com/twitch with the promo code TWiCH to save $50 on select mattresses. Terms and conditions apply, but you know what? 100 days to try out a new mattress. I like that idea, and I bet you will too. Thanks again to Casper.com/Twitch, Casper Mattresses, for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware. Much like my co-host on Tech Things, Shannon, when I forwarded her to the news, I'm going to quote Ars Technica here. Researchers reveal seemingly unpatchable vulnerability in Nvidia Tegra chips that make currently available Nintendo Switch consoles hackable. Newly published Tegra boot ROM exploit could be a big headache for Nintendo and others. And
could be. It already is.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's pain and there's pain, because kind of immediately as this was rolling out, within minutes, or I should say days, right? There's a couple of updates on the story at Ars Technica. Failover released its own Show a VL2 Tegra X1 boot ROM exploit alongside a Nintendo Switch Linux loader. So it's pretty crazy, right? They had been holding a 90-day responsible. I'll quote. Failoverflow alleged it had been holding to a 90-day responsible disclosure window for show of EL2 ending on April 25th. Since another person published the bug so close to our declared deadline, we're going to wait things out. Stay tuned. And they were also saying that they had like a Dolphin emulator running on it, running Legend of Zelda Windwalker on a Nintendo Switch. But this is a pretty big kind of crazy deal. Hardware hacker Catherine Temkin and ReSwitch, they basically this full extensive outline, Fuse Gelée, the cold boot vulnerability, and a whole proof of concept payload for the Switch. KTemkin.com.
All you do is short 2 pins in the USB connector.
Yeah.
Oh man.
One thing people note, it is easy to bork hardware because so much of the processor is controlled in software. It's really easy to trash the software, or make a mistake in the software or your modifications of it that will destroy the hardware you're playing with. But Ms. Temkin has a great, I should say Temkin, not Temkin, KTemkin.com has a whole FAQ up there on the Fuse Gelée, which I'm probably saying poorly. But it's pretty amazing. She pulled together a FAQ from Twitter, from ReSwitched, a web forum, and it's pretty crazy. And for people who think a lot about disclosure, it was responsibly disclosed. It was disclosed at first to Nvidia and then to vendors like Nintendo as a courtesy. And one of the big questions on that, if you think about hardware security, is, quote, why disclose this at all? Why not hold on to this in order to increase the number of affected Switch consoles? And Ms. Temkin says, unfortunately, this bug affects a significant number of Tegra devices beyond the Switch and even beyond the X1 included in the Switch. I can tell you it wasn't fun to find a bug with such a broad impact. It significantly complicated the ethics involved. And she thought it best to disclose this immediately and under terms that ensured that the vulnerability reached the public quickly, because of the potential for a lot of bad to be done by any parties who independently discover these vulnerabilities. It's a really good read and a really interesting read, especially if you're kind of curious about security and some of the the downsides. She points out there was no bounty, there was no money, there was no reward for the vulnerability. She also hasn't signed any NDAs related to it, so she can talk about it. But this is quote, the relevant vulnerability is the result of a coding mistake in the read-only boot ROM found in most Tegra devices. This boot ROM can have minor patches made to it in the factory, iPatches, but cannot be patched once the device has left the factory. This is, she also points out why, as horrible as this sounds, it may actually be a good thing. But this is something that will be hard-baked into all the Switches, or is currently hard-baked into all the Switches. So you bet they're changing that bit in the boot ROM. It's a good read. Pretty fascinating.
Probably already changed in ones they're making right now.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness! And the other thing, something we're taking a look at this week on Tech Thing, Dell's latest 27-inch monitor, the Ultra Thin S, 2560 by 1440, HDR VESA HDR 400 certified, and I got to say, I'm not particularly thrilled about the whole idea of an HDR desktop monitor. And it's cool. I mean, I like that VESA's kind of creating a certification program for monitors. And they have like HDR 400, 600, and 1000. 1000 is kind of what you need for full Dolby Vision and HDR10 support. But what's crazy about this is one of the brightest, most evenly lit. They used Corning Iris glass in the layers of the monitor. It tapers down like 5.5 millimeters thin at its thinnest point. It's about 29 millimeters at its thickest point. And the colors are fantastic because it's like 85% P3 color space, like 99, greater than 99%, sRGB, like I want to say greater than 85% of the P3 color space, which means it has a wider color gamut than a lot of HDR televisions that were sold in 2017 and probably a few 2018 HDR televisions. They claim a 600 nit brightness max, but that's probably only going to happen during certain HDR scenes. But it's still like a 400 nit brightness on the desktop, which is pretty bright for a desktop monitor. But that Corning glass inside of that Corning Iris glass, not only did it help them make a very, very thin monitor, but the lighting across, there are no hot spots. It is one of the cleanest looking monitors I've ever seen. And I also got to say, having spent a lot of time on laptops recently, I love matte finishes on monitors.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
There is one flaw, but I will keep it secret until you watch the review. 2 HDMI ports and audio pass through. It actually pulls the audio off the HDMI and sends it to an audio jack out the back if you want that. There's no speakers built in, which I consider a plus because I'm not a fan of monitor speakers. But there is one terrible flaw that you should go to techthing.com to find out about. I tease because I can. We also got a pretty nice review. Shannon has been spending a lot of quality time with a Lulzbot 3D printer. And I will say the TAS 6 3D printer is a fine piece of machinery. It is a loud piece of machinery to be sitting next to. But it is a very nice 3D printer. Oh my goodness. We don't talk too much about watches because there haven't been that many watches outside of the Apple space. Apple's kind of won the Smartwatch program, in part because as a story we talked about several months ago, talked about how Qualcomm really hasn't done anything for the Android watch community. But what's kind of crazy is Verizon is having issues with growth, but like all of their growth that's been coming out has been based on basically people signing up watches, which I thought was kind of crazy. I want to say like 360,000 smartwatches were being ported onto their data services. So tablets are down, phones are down for Nintendo, but smartwatches are up in a big way, which was kind of crazy. The other thing that was kind of crazy is everybody knew that Nintendo had a big hit with the Switch. 15 million units sold in the year ending March. Operating profit of $1.62 billion. That is 505% up over the year before. So in case you had any, if you had any doubts that the Switch was a big deal, the Switch was a big deal. And it'll be interesting to see. Everybody who's bought one is still actually playing it, which I think is probably the big bar to get through on any kind of device like that. While we're talking about mobile, AT&T, Verizon are being investigated. Basically, the U.S. is trying to, the United States of America is trying to figure out what the heck is going on with eSIMs. New York Times headline's pretty simple. U.S. investigating AT&T and Verizon over wireless collusion claim, which sounds really ominous. But basically, they want to make it just a wee bit more difficult, or at least 6 people with knowledge of the inquiry that spoke to the New York Times said that AT&T, Verizon, and a telecom standards organization were possibly coordinating their efforts to make it more difficult for eSIMs to be rolled out, and that's a big deal. I'm pretty sure Apple is a big push on this one.
What you mean? You mean companies are trying to be anti-competitive?
Well,
no.
it's not. It's they're working together to make it more difficult to switch. That's kind of the allegation on that one. Apple is a device maker that filed this, but like Apple, at least one wireless carrier, which I assume is Verizon, because to quote the New York Times, quoting a Verizon spokesperson, a difference of opinion with a couple of phone equipment manufacturers regarding the development of eSIM standards led to the complaint and investigation, that it was much ado about nothing. So, GSMA confirms that it has an eSIM standard that, would allow a carrier to lock the device to its network. So that's on hold right now while the DOJ investigates. But it's interesting to watch, like, just as soon as you think everything's open, like, oh, not everybody's being tied to a 2-year contract. Look, we have these awesome new standards. And look, people are buying their devices. Things just keep getting more complicated, but consistently so. Nest is still losing money. Amazon's working on home robots. And, the thing that, we talk about the issues with security on the Internet of Things, but if you feel like being terrified, or at least super uptight for several minutes, depending on how casual you are about medical technology, advanced hackers infect X-ray machines in healthcare espionage. So, one of the big things we saw last year was, like a hospital and, some huge businesses being shut down by ransomware. This is pretty crazy. This orange worm, this group is going after American healthcare groups, X-ray, MRI, and other, basically the computers controlling X-ray, MRI, and other medical machines. It's a report from Symantec that came out late last week. What's kind of crazy is they're not trying to shut them down. They're not trying to destroy them. They seem to be looking for ways to infect the machines and just get a little corporate espionage on. So, no signs of, no signs of destruction. But Quampiers, the malware that they put together, quote, gives the attackers the ability to extend the malware's functionality by downloading and executing additional modules in memory. So, the thing that makes it particularly interesting is that Orange Worm apparently is looking at the machines used to assist patients in completing consent forms for required procedures. Wrote to Symantec.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
the product is you on a search engine, or a search engine that's not security or a search engine that's not privacy focused. The product is you on your free email. The product is you on Facebook. And apparently the product is you if you're a group of hackers trying to figure out how to infiltrate the U.S. medical system and, I don't know, grab records. I don't know what they're going to do with them, but, it'll probably turn out to be like a sports betting ring. Something really horrible simple like that. But,
there's a big demand. I still haven't kind of wrapped my head around what the demand is, like why it is. But like even years and years back when I was working network defense for the Navy, like the medical computer systems eventually that kept getting attacked so much that we had to everybody had to get read in on HIPAA, which is like the requirements for like keeping people's medical data like confidential and safe and not allowing it to be spread around. All of us regular network, like anti-hacker types had to qualify for all the medical stuff so that we could then like assume control of protecting the medical network for the military. Because they just they needed help. They were just like, people were breaking into our stuff left and right. So, and that was years and years back. So there's clearly some motivation for that. What it is, I don't know, but it's definitely there.
I'm sure we'll find out one horrible Tuesday morning.
Sure,
just because
probably.
we can. Anything coming up at PC Per you can tease about, or is it all super secret at this point?
Nothing I can tease, unfortunately. I mean, we got stuff on the burner. It's cooking. Just can't talk about it yet. And Ryan can't talk about the reason why he's traveling right now, I believe. Either.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah,
but Ryan is traveling.
He's always traveling. There's always some exciting thing. Whenever Ryan's not on the show, it's usually because he's traveling.
I saw something yesterday that was incredibly exciting that I can't talk about either. So
see, there you go.
Probably not the same thing Ryan's traveling to.
Probably not.
Oh, my goodness. On that bright and cheerful note, PC Per, ladies and gentlemen, is the place to find Alan Malventano's extraordinary research and reviews on storage. If you're thinking about storage, you should be buying new gear, buying new SSDs. Take a look at Alan's work up on PCPer.com. They have, we talked about it last week, they got a full review Ken put together over at PCPer of the next generation, I should say the next evolution, the 2000 series of the Ryzen processors, which are, evolutionary. They're a squeak faster, but nothing that's making me replace the 1800X in my personal desktop. Lots of good stuff up there. You can find me, of course, at TEKTHING.com. That's techthing.com, the weekly show about, oddly enough, technology I host with Shannon. And again, we got that Dell 27 Ultra Thin monitor review. We talk about search engines that are featuring privacy rather than Quad 9 DNS, and quite a few more things in there. Like Make MKV, which is a nefarious tool for doing awesome things. I kid slightly. And I also do, if you're into home theater and audio, check out avxl.com, the podcast I host with Robert Heron. And subwoofers, people. Subwoofer placement is critical to subwoofer performance. That's all I'm going to say. You can ruin a subwoofer by putting it in the wrong portion of the room. The wrong location for a subwoofer can make it a not subwoofer, a sub without, a subless. I'm just going to, a not woofer, a mid with no. There was somewhere I was going with this, and I'm never going to get there. If you want to learn more about This Week in Computer Hardware, go to twit.tv/twitch. You're going to find links to all of our older episodes and, of course, information on how to subscribe to the audio or the video. In case you didn't know, we do video and audio of this show. And, that's about it for This Week in Computer Hardware. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Patrick Norton.
And I'm Alan Malventano.
We'll catch you next week on Twitch.